Reality is there's a very good chance you know somebody who's had a hip implant. In fact, hundreds of thousands of people need hip replacements every single year. And those replacements, well, they're supposed to last 20 years or more. But in an exclusive investigation, CBS News and KFF Health News found that one particular hip system has broken in hundreds of people. A metal part simply snaps in half, leaving those people in need of additional painful surgeries. Consumer investigative correspondent Anna Werner is here. Anna, this has been a long, multi-month investigation. Good morning.
Yeah, that's right, Tony. Good morning. So imagine that you are walking, riding a bike, or just at work when you suddenly find yourself on the ground because a hip implant you thought you could rely on for years snapped in half inside your body, meaning more surgeries and months of recovery. That's what we found happened to hundreds of people, including one Arizona man.
56-year-old Brad Little works as a middle school PE teacher, teaching the healthy habits he's subscribed to throughout his life.
I wanted to be an example of physical fitness, so I have always done a good job of staying active.
But in his mid-30s, he says, he developed arthritis in his right hip. And when he saw the doctor,
he told me right away, if it's hurting you too bad, it's going to be a time you're going to have to get a hip replacement.
Hip replacement surgery has been successfully performed for decades and involves removing deteriorating hip bones and implanting metal and plastic parts, typically a ball and cup, which connect to a stem that fits inside the thigh bone. But Little says his surgeon told him he'd be using a more recently developed type of artificial hip called the Profemur, made of titanium.
And said that this was something that was for people just like myself who are young, athletic.
What made the Profemur different? It added a detachable neck section between the ball and stem, made in different sizes to try to achieve a custom fit. And manufacturer Wright Medical marketed the product for active people. They even hired tennis player Jimmy Connors as a spokesperson for their hip system. He was quoted on this company website saying his new hip has given me back my quality of life. It's allowed me to do anything I did before. That helped reassure Little. In 2007, he had the surgery on his right hip.
The way I felt was just like I was 20 years old again. I mean, it was wonderful.
He had the same surgery on his left hip a couple years later, and everything seemed fine, he says, until September 2017, as he walked down this school hallway.
Turned a corner to head to the locker room, and I felt this click. The next thing I knew, I'm on the floor laying down on the ground.
At the hospital, x-rays showed the Profemur titanium neck in his right hip had broken, snapped in two.
When they showed you the x-ray, what did you think?
Well, I thought, how could this be?
And fixing it meant splitting his leg bone down the middle to get the metal stem out of the bone.
And there's no way around the fact that there's a failed or broken implant in that patient's thigh. We have to remove it.
Dr. Lee Rubin is an orthopedic surgeon and prosthetic hip expert at Yale University.
You're basically talking about cutting somebody's leg bone in half.
We have to open the bone, yes.
Little's wife, Kristen, cared for him during his 6-month-long recovery.
It's really devastating to watch the person you love more than anything in your life go through all of that.
Our CBS News and KFF Health News investigation found those fractures have happened to hundreds of people. Reports submitted to the FDA describe patients' hips breaking during routine activities, hiking, golfing, mowing the lawn, even simply leaning over to pick up a key. And in a court hearing in 2018, a Wright Medical attorney admitted the company was aware of more than 760 fractures of Profemur necks. But she defended the product, telling the court a device fracture does not mean it is defective. Devices fracture all the time. But that's not what the company told doctors. In prior promotional materials, Wright Medical guaranteed the Profemur's structural reliability. Dr. Rubin showed us why in many cases that promise and the product didn't hold up.
There's more stress on what we call the lateral side, the outside of the neck. And that is where the fatigue fractures or the cracks would begin to the point where it snapped in half and broke. It snaps just like that.
That's as long as it takes.
1 second.
And patients like New Hampshire's Mark Feld, a former runner who had both his Profemur implants break, are still angry.
No concern for the ultimate patient. It's just, let's make these parts, let's get them into people's bodies. We've got the best product, blah, blah, blah. They didn't have the best product, and they didn't put the best product in my body.
In 2020, 15 years after that product hit the market, the company that bought the Profemur brand from Wright Medical voluntarily recalled some of those titanium necks. But that didn't help patients still living with the devices, like Brad Little. In 2021, he was coaching students on this tennis court when his left hip implant also broke, meaning another 6-month recovery.
Yeah, I don't think I can ever forgive them, honestly, for what they've put us through as a couple. You know, shame on them.
Well, both Brad Little and Mark Feld sued the company. Their cases were settled out of court, and Wright Medical denied liability in those and other lawsuits we reviewed. The company was bought by Stryker Corporation in 2020. Its spokesperson declined to comment. Now, in 2013, Wright Medical had sold the Profemur brand to a Chinese company, Microport. It still advertises the Profemur implants on its website, but says they're no longer marketed in the United States. Microport did not respond to multiple requests for comment.
Of course, they're still in people's bodies. I mean, it was hard to hear about that. I can't imagine what it would be like to live through some of these experiences. Really tough stuff.
And even the doctors call that revision surgery gruesome.
Oh, my.
It is
with doctors talking.
With every new detail, we kept groaning with everything that you were saying.
Yeah.
So the people that have them now, what should they do?
You have
I
to
didn't
talk
even
to
know
your
this was
doctor.
possible.
The fractures are
Anna.
still happening, in other words.
Right, they're still happening.
I didn't know it was possible that it could break. And you hear the word titanium, and you really think I'm in good shape.
And you know, we talked about Jimmy Connors.
Yeah.
Right? So we spoke to Jimmy Connors by phone. He told us that Wright Medical never told him about any Profemur fractures. He wishes they had, he said. He wishes, because he said he himself might have gotten a different implant if they had. He said his did not fracture, but it was replaced in 2012 due to other complications.
So if you have this device, this Wright device, what should you do?
A lot of people are not going to know what device they have, right? So you need to go to your doctor, and there are other places where you can look that up. And tomorrow, we're going to tell you more about what people knew, what the company knew when, and the FDA.
Great.
You have a part two?
Yeah, we
Part
got a
two tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean,
My mom had this surgery done, so I'm going to ask her.
Yeah, a lot of people
really?
have
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, my aunt did too, now that you mention it. In fact,
start asking
we all
these
know
questions.
somebody. Yeah.
We all know someone.
Yeah.
Klaus in our studio has one, too. We want him to be all right.
And a lot of them are successful.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you know, we want people to know these products were not the majority of products sold. The problem as a consumer is most times you don't really know what the parts are.
It's very scary.
You know?
Can't wait for part two.
Anna.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you very much.
Part 2 of our exclusive investigation with KFF Health News into hip replacement products that we discovered have been breaking inside of hundreds of people. It's been going on for years. The result is people suddenly collapse and they need really, truly gruesome surgeries to fix the problem. This morning, we are learning that many of those fractures actually could have been avoided if only recalls of the product had happened sooner. Our consumer investigative correspondent, Anna Werner, is here once again to explain. Anna, good morning.
Good morning, Tony. You know, manufacturers of medical devices like hip implants are supposed to monitor problems, in part with the oversight of the Federal Food and Drug Administration. Yet we found it took years for some of these implants to be recalled, exposing many more patients to these faulty products.
So you were riding your bike basically up this path,
hip, yes.
right?
This is where the Profemur artificial hip implant Perry Parks got 6 years before broke as he rode his bike along this Los Angeles beach.
I felt like the hip dislocated.
Suddenly, he couldn't control his leg.
And I fell over into the sand, and I then tried to get up, and I couldn't get up.
At the emergency room, an x-ray showed part of his hip implant, a 2-inch titanium neck connecting his hip to his leg, had snapped in two, something he says the doctor couldn't believe.
He said he had never seen anything like it.
Parks is just one of hundreds of people whose Profemur hip implants fractured, leaving them needing painful revision surgeries. Hip replacement surgery involves removing deteriorating hip bones and implanting metal and plastic parts, typically a ball and cup connected to a stem that fits inside the thigh bone. The Profemur system, manufactured by Wright Medical, was different because it added a detachable neck between the ball and stem, made in different sizes to try to achieve a custom fit. But experts we spoke to said that titanium neck was vulnerable to fracture.
So essentially, that piece, that small piece, would snap.
That's correct.
Dr. Lee Rubin is a prosthetic hip expert at Yale University.
This piece would break in half.
CBS News and KFF Health News found reports to the FDA of titanium Profemur necks breaking inside U.S. patients as early as 2005. Yet it took 15 years until 2020 for any of those necks to be recalled, and even then, only some sizes. By that time, more than 800 reports of those fractures had been submitted to the FDA. Yale University orthopedic surgeon Dr. Aydin Poor studied those Profemur fractures.
We basically recommended this stem to be completely removed from the market.
Do you think they waited too long?
I think they waited too long, true. This implant should have been pulled out of the market earlier.
It wasn't. But in 2009, Wright Medical did begin making the neck out of a stronger metal, a cobalt chrome alloy. That's the product Kristen Bjorn, a former dancer from Pasadena, California, got in her hip replacement in 2013.
It was fabulous. I was able to walk without pain, and, I just wanted to get back to my normal life.
But less than 2 years after it was implanted, her Profemur hip broke. It took 3 surgeries to fix her hip, including implanting this metal cage-like device she calls the claw.
It looks really painful to me.
Yeah, it is. To this day, it's painful.
It's still there.
Yeah, it'll be there for the rest of my life.
4 months after her implant broke in 2015, FDA records show the new owner of the Profemur brand, Chinese company Microport, recalled the specific cobalt chrome neck used in Bjorn's hip, citing an unexpected rate of postoperative fractures affecting some 10,500 implants. But that recall only involved one size of the cobalt chrome neck. 11 other sizes remained on the market, despite reports that some were corroding inside some patients' bodies. Microport did not respond to multiple requests for comment. The company that bought Wright Medical, device company Stryker, declined to comment. Fractures are still being reported. In 2023, the FDA received over a dozen reports of Profemur necks breaking inside patients.
Are you surprised by that?
I'm not surprised, and I'll tell you why. We know there's going to be patients that have the implant that had not failed at 5 years, but they would fail at some point in the years afterwards. It's amazing that this is still going on.
Something Kristen Bjorn worries about.
I really hope that other people are okay. I think about them a lot, honestly.
Why?
Because of everything I went through, and I know what they're in store for. It's scary.
Now, in 2020, FDA records show Microport recalled all the Profemur necks. But the recall was temporary, so Microport could update the packaging documents of the Profemur implants. It added a precaution for doctors, saying in part that patients should not have unrealistic expectations, including, among other activities, substantial walking.
Direct quote there.
Now, we've also spoken to, we talked about the reports to the FDA of about a dozen fractures, but there's also a corrosion issue, and there's reports of about a dozen instances of corrosion, these devices corroding to the point of failure just this year in 2023 as well. So there's a couple different things going on there, actually, with the cobalt chrome.
It's terrifying for people walking around with what could feel to them now like a time bomb in their hip.
Yes. Yeah. Keyword walking around.
Yeah, walking around, exactly. And, we forget, or we shouldn't forget, that it was marketed in the images you showed yesterday with people playing tennis and golf.
Exactly.
And then you told a story yesterday about somebody bending down to pick up a pen and had a problem. So how do people know if they have this?
So it's tricky. So you have to go to usually the hospital will have the records,
okay,
or the doctor, but often it's the hospital because that's where the surgeries are performed.
Yeah.
I spoke to Dr. Rubin about this. He said, go to the hospital, get your records. It's better for the patient to do that. Then consult with an expert. They might take an x-ray. He said there might be some people for whom they want to look further.
Yeah.
He said, but 80% it's going to be waiting and watching.
Oh, my gosh.
Scary stuff.
It's not an easy fix.
It looks so painful, too.
Well, thank you for this reporting. It's eye-opening, for sure.